urban south. It critically examines the ways in which cities are uniquely positioned within different urban and knowledge hierarchies. The volume will be of interest to scholars from the disciplines of urban studies, geography, development and anthropology, as well as postgraduate students researching the global south and third-year undergraduate students studying cities and urban studies, development and critical thinking. Now, I will introduce the authors of this book. The first one would be Dr. Edwin Mcgregor, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Twente and a senior research fellow at the Resilience Development Initiative. His research focuses on climate change adaptation, urban environmental justice, and planetary decolonization. He was one of the recipients of the Alliance Climate Risk Research Award in 2017. And the second author would be Dr. Hannah A. Rothschild, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Geography, Durham University, the UK. She is a feminist urban geographer interested in the everyday gendered lives, lived experience of the world's invisible majority in academically overlooked smaller cities. And the third author would be Dr. Isolde de Villiers, who is a lecturer in the Department of Mercantile Law at the University of the Free State, South Africa. Her research focuses on special justice from a feminist perspective and the ways in which aspects of law, business, and commerce intersect with the specialty of the overlooked cities of Bloemfontein or Mangaung and its surroundings. And the fourth author who is supposed to be here is Dr. Julia Wesley, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Bartlett Development Planning Unit in the University College London. Her current research in the program titled Knowledge in Action for Urban Equality, or KNOW, seeks to understand and support critical pedagogies of learning the city for addressing urban inequalities in Latin American, African, and Asian cities. So thank you so much and welcome. Thank you for joining with us today, Edwin, Hannah, Isolde, and Isolde. Hi. And also for the readers in this session, we have Professor Delik Udala, Elisa Sutanujaya MArch, and also Dr. Saud Sagala here with us today. Now I will also introduce all of the readers. The first one would be Professor Delik Udala, who is a faculty member at the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development in Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia. He is also a senior research fellow at the ITB Research Center for Infrastructure and Regional Development. He is also the program director of Master and Doctor in Urban and Regional Planning and Master and Doctor in Transportation at the same faculty. In addition, he serves as an editorial member of the Journal of Regional and City Planning and also an editorial board member of the Singapore Journal of Tropical Geography. Delik has focused his works on peri-urban, suburban, mega-urban, and mega-regional transformation in Indonesia and Asia. He is particularly interested in the interfaces, interaction, and conflicts between spatial economic transformation and socio-natural changes, between global forces and local aspiration in the reproduction, planning, and governance of the urban regional frontiers. He has participated in various research projects on, among others, suburbanization, mega project and large-scale land development, urban deconcentration, peri-urbanization, metropolitan politics and governance, and also mega regionalization. The second leader here, we have Elisa Sutanujaya, MArch, who is educated as an architect in Universitas Tarumanegara. And also she has a master's degree from the University of New South Wales, taking specialization in sustainable and urban development. She has been teaching in various universities in 2006, such as in Department of Architecture, Universitas Pelita Harapan, and Graduate School of Planning, Universitas Tarumanegara. She also a co-founder of Urban Lab at Graduate School of Planning, Universitas Tarumanegara, and also her past working experience are included as an architect in several firms in Jakarta. In 2009, together with fellow friends, she founded an NGO focused on urban and knowledge issues called Rujak Center for Urban Studies. Her last position in RCUS was Program Director, where she is responsible for developing and managing programs that are funded by Ford Foundation, HIFOS, TIFA Foundation, Revenue Watch Institute, Japan Foundation, Goethe Institute, Toyota Foundation, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and Open Society Institute. She was also awarded 2 fellowships from the first one would be the Education in Sustainable Development Genesis Fellowship from the Government of Japan in 2010. And the second one is the Eisenhower Fellowship in 2013. The purpose of her fellowship is to explore technologies and creativity that foster public participation and examine current US open data application and development initiatives and their role in urban planning decision making. And we have also the third reader here, Pak Saud Sagala. Dr. Saud Sagala is an assistant professor at School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development, Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia, where he has conducted intensive research and consultancy experiences on spatial planning, disaster risk management, and climate change adaptation. He recently develops further interest on cultural heritage and tourism, renewable energy policy, and microinsurance. He is an editorial board member of ASEAN Engineering Journal and advisory board for Journal of Forum Geography. Previously, he assumed a position as a managing editor of Journal of Regional and City Planning of ITP. He also serves as a senior research fellow at Resilience Development Initiative and an advisor for Bandung Disaster Study Group, empowering university students to conduct disaster education for children and youth in West Java. Pak Sautir is a researcher at Research Center for Disaster Mitigation and Climate Change Center, both of which are at Bandung Institute of Technology. Most recently, Pak Saud has been also selected as a Pan-Asia Risk Reduction Fellow since July 2014 to January 2015 by Start Washington. In this fellowship, he is affiliated with Manila Observatory, the Philippines. Now, thank you for all the readers who are here, Pak Delik, Pak Saud, and also Mbak Elisa. And all right, now I will share the agenda for our session today. After this, the readers will present their reflection on the book. And after that, the authors will respond to the readers. The Q&A session follow next and will be wrapped up by me, and I will thus close today's book session. So please, for Pak Delik, now the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dimas. Good morning, good afternoon to all. It's really glad for me to be here. I guess it's a rare occasion that we have a book discussion, I guess, and in an online mode. To me, probably it's one of the first time since the COVID. And the book itself, to me, it's really like it's some other or quite many scholars dream comes true. Actually, I remember when I was it's a decade ago. I guess it's 2011 when I just returned from my PhD from the Netherlands, and a professor from UCLA. I remember he said, "Why are you researching big city, metropolitan city? That doesn't represent Indonesia." Okay, that I am stuck to answer it. Yeah, that's true. and from that on, I think from that moment it started that some scholars begin to research an alternative cities of Indonesia, and not just Indonesia, of course, but maybe many of my research experience here. But I think until now, after a decade, in my reading, it's the first time that the ambition to alternative view of cities or secondary or intermediate cities into a, it is the first time, because mostly what I read is more in terms of paper and journal articles. Yeah, surely the discussion about small city, it emerged first, I think, in the 70s something, but then it's kind of disappearing, and then began a decade from ago, and probably this is the first time that a book is produced, I think, on that certain topic. So I like, so maybe in my reading, this is book is focused on under researched part of our spatial entity, and non-established cities, and what is interesting when we're looking at overlook cities, it mentioned that it can be intentional or unintentional. But what will be matters or meaningful is that it's not innocent, kind of. There is a power relation in producing cities as it is now. We mostly understood, or the priority of which city that researching. And throughout the book, I learned that to focusing is the three of you, Hannah, Erwin, and Isolde. You're focusing on the overlooked city. What is interesting is it kind of a way of producing alternative, innovative viewpoint on the urban phenomena. Even the way you present, that's interesting to me. Like how focusing on the overlooked can be very innovative. Like how you're presenting the table of contents, not in terms of pages organization, but from the missing middle from east to west. I think that's that's something that nobody really pay attention to it. But that's more meaningful than you order the contents into just organization of the pages. And also what will be for me to for the first time is to upside down map, the global map with upside down perspective. That's really intriguing or provoking our already established understanding on any kind of reality. But maybe as also in indicated in the terms of reference, yeah, by Erwin and others, of this, I'm not very much focusing on criticizing or maybe really presenting to you the real understanding about the book, but what it means to me. That's quite powerful message. So I'm trying. So I try to be consistent in that. What does it means to me as scholars as urban scholars while learning or reading your which is to me it's very much meaningful in many ways. First, I see that well, overlooking, well, in my perspective, it can be a blessing, right? So to overlooking is probably it's one of the basic consequences of human, as we are rationally bounded. Yeah, we are bounded rational creature. We cannot represent the whole phenomena that we witness. So overlooking is a basic features, and probably in terms of or scientific development, it can be a necessity uh, because scientific development generally include the process of classification, selection, focusing. So clearly you will select and focus on certain thing. So and that can result in some other things. But in fact, probably new knowledge emerging. So if you overlook something, then you will give other the chance to unmask the overlooked. So maybe trying to reflect on my own experience. So while three of you are focusing on how things are overlooked in reality, and that's help you uncover something new. well, in my experience, is something unclear, something that is not well defined, well classified, that also will generate new knowledge. So that's why, since my PhD, I've been focusing on that elements of the city. So it's overlooked parts of the city, while everyone is talking about the city or the inner city. Uh, that's something that is powerful part of the city, surely, but it never attracts me. What has been missing is the transition area. Let's say the transition between city and country. That's something can be very significant, that yet not so much knowledge that we have to understand it. So reading in your book that you people are talking about the global north, the center, that actually overlooks the large part of the other part of the globe, like the global south or the periphery, or while focusing on the primate city, main city, well, it overlooks, but also give birth to the research on secondary, mid-sized, and ordinary city. As also in my experience with, well, it's been focused on the rural-urban dichotomy. Well, actually, it's the interaction between the urban and the rural that is matter. Also, while people are talking about CBD inner city, well, actually, it's the city is expanding, and how can we understand it? Yeah, but overlooking some cities can be, or some um, phenomenon over other also can be dangerous. I think at least we can see two things. First, it may lead to a thinking if you are overlooking, like as your book also indicated, how certain mid-sized city are not very much researched, and in that is how the hegemony of a mega city becomes the standard of our evaluation on any other cities. Also, I think in other contexts, like the discussion, the hegemonic thinking of global city, smart city, green city, that seems to be the norm, where probably it's a simplistic uh, benchmark that we have on the much diverse of. In the practical level, the other dangerous thing is that it may result in bias in policy realm, like maybe since, I think since decades ago, how seems to be superiority of policy studies tend to uh, intentionally or unintentionally export it into rural problems. So how the rural problems is solved through urban solutions, how disaster also happen. Uh, I would like also see that overlooking is a relative power play. Maybe in my own experience in Indonesian context, I don't know in other countries, we see a village, for instance, has been associated with marginalization, over underrepresented entity in a country. If we compare to, let's say, urban areas, metropolitan areas, that how the political spheres see it. But actually, in fact, meanwhile, in our constitution and law, actually, what is happening is the other way around. Which is systematically and politically overlooked metropolitan. Well, maybe that's a bit my own view as metropolitan planners, because it at the practical level, I'm really struggling how to really contribute in the, let's say, the metropolitan policy, because we don't have such laws regulation on metropolitan. or urban region. But while the village is very much strongly regulated, even in our constitution law, we admit that there is village as an administrative entity, but there is no entity such as metropolitan urban region, and that's make metropolitan areas becoming unmanageable. And that's one of the reasons is moving the capital to Kalimantan, because we cannot really manage the already congested city region, and we don't have such a solid or comprehensive policy to tackle it. So I mean, that's to see is overlooking certain element is can be a relative viewpoint. I know. I think as we also, I think my last comment will be about how can we empower overlooked cities. That first, as you say, that some cities are off the map. So how every city actually probably has a chance to be on the map? How can we make it happen? First, we have to focus, in my readings in your book, is we have to focus on the context city are located and emerge, and the process rather than the content or the object itself. So like in my own reflection, I'm searching about metro areas. I'm not using the term metropolis, but metropolitanization. So it's the process matters actually. When I research about mega region, it's, well, what is matter is the process of mega regionalization, for instance. Because if I use the term mega region, some scholar will not put Indonesia on the map. There is no mega region in Indonesia. But if we recognize its process of becoming, well, we can see that some part of Indonesia also being mega regionalized, like in the north coast of Java. Also metropolitan, we see also, we only see Jakarta, maybe, I think in most literature is talking about Jakarta, but if we see metropolitan is a process of being a metropole, then some small city like Greater Jakarta it's valuable as a lesson for us to understand these metropolitan areas. And also we have to see that every city is situated. So if we want to empower overlooked city, we can view it from a larger or multi-scale perspective. So rather than focus on the city, probably we can see the region. So in that sense, you can include that the city is not, or the big city cannot live by the, have to connect to the other cities around the region. And also every city has a meaning. So rather than focusing on the hierarchy ranking, it is the function of the city that matters. So for instance, in the metropolitan context, because that's my own understanding, rather than using the term city, satellite city, maybe it's more meaningful to speak about industrial city, because that's very important element within the metro areas. Just supporting part of the whole region, but it is a very fundamental part of the region, because that's the origin of urbanization is through industrialization. But so far we just consider it as just a collection of factors, and every city is interlinked. So to promote connection rather than division, that's also a way of how we pull up the overlooked cities into a wider discussion. So like rather than divide city and country, the rural and the urban, what is how to
I
link?
think,
Yes.
sorry, but the time is up actually.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's my last comment on the book. Thank you so much.
all right. So thank you, Pak Delik, for your reflection of the book, and we will get back to you later. So now we proceed to Mbak Elisa. Yeah, so could you please deliver your reflection less than 8 minutes, please? The floor is
Okay.
yours. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. And funny thing is, within this week, I accept that I have to read this book over the weekend. Actually, it's starting 2 weekends ago. There's also an event in Bapenas about degree of urbanization. Maybe you are coming from Europe or already familiar with the degree of urbanization, since it's a very EU-based concept. It's about how you compare cities, but only through a statistic, population density, GDP, and how it's applied in 1 square kilometer. So I don't probably Bapenas also interested in that concept, maybe because from what I heard that they want to make a draft for law on urban, because like Pak Delik said, that we don't really have a framework about what is urbanization process in Indonesia and etc. But I remember 7 years ago, actually, we proposed a draft to Ministry of Home Affairs, so they can also make a draft about urban, either it's a urban development, urban cities. We don't care what it's called, but we propose what it's supposed to be in content of the law. But again, those two events actually become a part of the reflection today. And since I don't want to be bubbling, so actually I already prepared kind of like a notes that I'm going to read it from my note. And if you're interested, then I can also send it the note to you. So one question that I asked after I read the first chapter is always important, by the way. Is it overlookedness is a product of binary thinking that usually happen either in the bureaucracy, government, and also shaped by in which city has been classified and studied. So it's also remind me to any kind of urbanization books or urban issue books from World Bank or ADB, they always have this kind of comparison. Look into statistic, population, size, and everything. So they only define it by something that very analytical. So it's also made me reflect that how the urban national policy shaped so far, because so far national urbanization frameworks, I mean in Indonesia, tend to reflect on the experience and challenge of a country, primary city and urban region. So they only talk about 10 metropolitan areas and that's it. And the rest for the secondary cities or peripheral or medium size or whatever they call it, they either to look into more like cultural thing, historical thing, and all things that related that can be pushed to economic development. And of course, the dynamics of the primary urban center have to be viewed as a critical evidence for the development challenge. But sometimes it's everything that happened in the primary area can be tend to be comparison to another smaller city. But since these primary cities develop into mega region, for the case of Jabodetabek, for the Greater Jakarta, it actually become more difficult to compare their function. And I think Pak Delik already mentioned about that, how you cannot really compare metropolitan into smaller cities, but that's what happened. So every time we talk about transportation policy in Indonesia, for example, then we always look back to what happened in Jakarta, but never really look into what happened in Yogyakarta or in Denpasar, for example. So those in urban analysis and policy formation, if it's continued to be placed largely on the experience of cities like Jakarta, they are less able to adequately address the dynamic and potential future of secondary cities. So everything, so this overlookedness at the end of the day is by design. I mean, for policy sense, it's really by design. So everything have to be looked into big city, then is overlook the others. So the question is for us, I mean for Rujak, is how to reorient this this school practice because it's so school and so misleading, and bring more the experience of secondary cities back into the analysis of the national urban planning. So in an environment where Jakarta has dominated the urban scene for so long, therefore, it is very important to engage various actors in cities like Semarang, like Cirebon, like Bontang, like the one in the book, or like Bandar Lampung. Even though Bandar Lampung is 1 million people, though, is probably is considered big in Europe. So therefore, to use these diverse histories, cities and position and experience to create new lens through which they understand their own city. So such a network process also enable planners, governments, and administrator, maybe professor, activists, researcher, and artists to also work at a sufficient scale, comparable scale to the city, to have their effort taken seriously. Additionally, if a national urban framework is to comprehensively cover national urban space, then it needs to consider not only a policy response to cities taken one at a time, but to also have the means to identify actual potential, complementary specialization, and share problems. So this can only be ensued in cities assessing themselves in the context of ongoing relationship with each other. Hence, so that's why some sort of comparative urbanism also developed at all time between those cities. So the book also is a reminder for me that urban knowledge is not simply an account of city functioning along agree about indicators and parameters, like I mentioned before about the World Bank books and etc., with each city assigned as a ranking and or score, like already Pak Delik mentioned. Is it not a checklist about what kinds of problems and capacities exist? Rather, it's a network of ongoing dialogue that attempts to better understand how particular urban characteristics like economic, migration, culture, history, built environment, informal economic, politics, all kind of things evolve and change over time, with emphasis what's still taken place or what stopped or what developed or what evolved. While actors from different cities can discuss different practice, governance styles, and histories, the more important facet of this process is how to open new forms of translation to provide actors a broader sense of alternative. If there are many different ways available to accomplish specific objective, that's also become a problem in this area, in this case, because sometimes within the government sector, for example, the Ministry of Public Works also produce all kind of, like procedure to do this and that, to develop this and that. And that's why it's more make our cities looks homogeneous in somehow. So everything that related to what happened in the cities and how the city producely genuinely sometimes sometimes overlooked as well in this case. So with limited resource, of course, smaller cities tend to have smaller budget, right? What are the best way to intervene in specific city? Where should particular infrastructure and investment be situated? What kind of governance strategies that best situated to a particular city? So that's kind of question that should be answered. It's not necessarily only transferring money from the national government to the local government, but have to be understand first what kind of resources that limited, but what kind of also potential that you also have. So, and what kind of regional and scalar effects between those cities? Sometimes they are also placed regionally, very, how can I say, situated in one, either from one stream, river, or whatever it is, that can be generated through the collaboration of particular cities. And in this formulation, the urban knowledge goes beyond a repertory of analysis, best practice, or academic documentation that take onto the task of developing national urbanization framework based to the complexion of Indonesian cities and urban development. That does not mean that Jakarta is out of the picture. It does not mean that major cities like Surabaya, Makassar, or Medan do not exhibit many of the same capacities and problems in Jakarta. Rather, the capacities of Jakarta are inevitably enhanced by more substantial interaction among Indonesia other cities, and that is only by process sharing of the work of urbanization that a country can enhance its economic and human welfare potential. So in this way, actually, Rujak
Sorry,
what
but the time is
yes.
up. So
Oh,
could you
okay,
please like
sorry.
wrap up faster? Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
sorry.
lovely.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, what Rujak always push is to to do co-production of knowledge between the citizen in order to find and understand what happened in the city. So therefore, so actually, I try to relate this experience also reflection also with the moving the capital. So for you know that many cities try to be Jakarta. All cities in Indonesia want to have malls. And sometimes they said, "Wow, your city doesn't have a cinema or something like that." And it's more than just an anecdote. It's something that worrying because there is something more serious behind it. Jakarta citizens or cityness has been too dominating in Indonesian urban discourse and imaginaries. Everyone want to become Jakarta. We have decentralization, but somehow it's not successful. But the answer again is not about moving the capital or whatever it is, but the answer is coming from what is the something that you can really produce from the city, and what is the policy behind that to produce together with the citizen of these secondary cities. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for your really elaborate explanation. So I will get back to you later. And now we can proceed to Pak South. Pak South, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dimas, and also first of all, congratulations, Erwin, Hannah, and also Isabel for it's a very important book, and I would like also to highlight that this is a rare book, meaning that we don't talk about mega cities here. We don't talk about very developed cities, but we, as the title says, overlook cities. And I would invite more and more, I would say, research on overlook cities in the global world, where many, I would say, still need or deserve research, and this is also happening in Indonesia. So that kind of, I would say, approach and also lesson learned would be important. And the last reader, Bu Elisa, says about how some medium cities or smaller cities tend to follow what is have been done in as the capital city show or the mega city in the country, but sometimes it's not really the real or the optimal condition that could solve the problems. And looking or reading at the book itself, I also start from the first chapter, but there is one quote that I find it interesting or can be a bit personal to me. It's about although there's only two words there, but for me some medium cities tend to be like a retirement city, and in chapter 1 was telling about it, and not in other chapters telling about it, but you could see that's from the case of in China, and how a city in the scale of small or medium attracted such way. And I think in some other countries also people could see like some elderly staying in the small and medium cities. And this also happened in some cities in Indonesia. Like people after they retirement, they go to some smaller cities. In Indonesia, we have some cities like that. Like I could say from my province, there is a number of cities like Sukabumi or Ciamis, where or Banjar, where retired cities seem to be an important, or the next step for others who have. Want to spend their old time. And then second is that I think the book itself also writing some similar topic that has been also shown in the mega city, so which is on informality. because I think informality also happen, and the book here that you showed and also the chapters show how the informality is important point to deal with, to address. And informality not only happening in big cities, informality is not only as as product of how the failure in big cities or complex cities like Jakarta, for example, or Manila, or we can name some other mega cities in the world. But it can also happen in urbanized or some medium cities like the cases show here. And I think this is important to highlight that. And earlier, like the National Planning Agency of Indonesia, how they try to measure the degree of urbanization, for example, or the degree of cities. I think informality would be very important to consider there. Of course, there are debates on informality. However, to my understanding, informality can bring, of course, there are benefits and also there are challenges that caused by the informality. And from my my background as a disaster risk management researcher, I look in some point informality can also be related to locations that are prone to hazards, or some can say this, it can lead to vulnerabilities. And I think in the book also it shows the examples, quite a number of examples. It is interesting because while the title doesn't really show about disaster, but I think I could understand from the background. Of course, the authors have interest also on disasters, and also of course I could imagine that maybe the discussion in the development of the book might also relate with the disasters. And I could see from the case of, for example, Nepal, from the case in Colombia, and also the case of Argentina, and then there is also from Indonesia, that shows how disasters that are related and also can be consequence of this power politics and knowledge in these overlooked cities. And this is very interesting to me because that means it's important to also consider how the phenomena and also how the interventions have been existed. Although if we read in the, let's say, more popular textbooks, examples, of course, coming from again big cities, mega cities like Tokyo, like maybe Istanbul, also Bangkok, Manila, and so on. But I think what is shown in this book about how medium cities are experiencing disasters and how innovations can come, and also the knowledge, the debates, and also the idea of how to deal with the disasters can also be lesson learned, important one. And I would also see this an important to be further explored in other similar cities in the global south, because I would believe the characteristic would also the size would also very much important. And in some global south cities, for example, the role of culture very much important on that matter. Although I couldn't find much about culture in this book, and perhaps this is going to be my my questions or a point of things to, let's say, to discuss about, because I think in some smaller cities, like for example, earlier Elisa mentioned about Yogyakarta. People know Yogyakarta as, of course, culture with Japanese culture, but also, city of culture in the broader sense, and many things have developed there, and how the interaction between the global, national, and also even the local culture also show the produce like through the provision of open space. I just recently came from the city. I could, now the city of Jakarta looks, the Malioboro street looks cleaner because government, city governor, the city mayor, governor decided to make this not having the informal sectors working there, but the question is it the city that you want? Is it the city that is sustainable? And how actually, if you see the city itself, you can also see some, a global franchise there, some coffee shops, some even, some for meals and others are there. So how about the rights of the locals to be there? And I think this is something that could also be discussed further, or something that could be shown. And in the book have already discussed how politics in the city can play influence or important role in terms of the decision making, in terms of what is being shown in the cityscape, and also in the planning, in the urban planning itself. And again, I think what is important also, of course, to bring the sustainability into the center or the context. And in this direction, I would see local people, local culture would be important, and this is something that I think we can also discuss about it. And lastly, I would like to say it's also important that the book also discuss about financing or finance, budget, or also debt. And in this context, of course, this is very important because with the figure that we have in Indonesia, for example, many medium cities have difficulty to, of course, to develop because of development financing conditions. However, because of like the opening of highway or toll road now in Jakarta, some smaller cities are able to attract more investors. The question is, of course, investment come, but the impact of the city, can they deal with that? Can the local people deal with that? And this is something that we could also discuss. And this is the expertise of Pak Diki, Pak Delik, for example, in the context of Kendal near Semarang, where more investments are coming. But however, how the environment and how the communities can yes, thank you. That's the wrap up. And how the smaller cities dealing with that. I think some of these have been answered by this book, or at least being presented. And the question is later is further research, and also policy should need to be, I would say, provided to the stakeholders dealing with medium, smaller and medium cities like what we are discussed today. Thank you, Dimas, and also congratulations to the authors.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pak Saud. Yeah, we'll get back to you later. So now we proceed to the author response. So either one of you, Pak Edwin, Hannah, and also Isolde, anyone would like to respond to the readers, please?
Thank you so much, Dimas, and for all the reader. Isolde will start, Hannah, and then I'll be the last to share our response, reflection with our reader comments and thought. Isolde, if you want to go first, and then Hannah, and I'll be the last.
Thank you so much. I think my co-authors will echo this, but I have to start by thanking you, Erwin, Dimas, for arranging this, but then to the three responders for really meticulously taking issue with the points we raise in the book. It is really enlightening to hear it from this side, and encouraging to hear that you've read some of the most important points. I think Erwin will say a few things in general. So what I want to do is just give you a bit of perspective on where I come from and how I read Overlooking. So my field, as you've heard, is law. And to give you some background on how I became involved in the project. So clearly I don't come from urban studies. I don't come from geography, but Hannah and I met at an Urban Lives conference. And someone in my group, I explained my project to someone in the group, saying that basically I'm interested in boring cities. And she went, oh, you need to speak to Hannah. She also works on boring cities. So there's something around this. I think that is how that gives you a perspective on how initially I understood overlookedness. And it resonates with what Professor Udala said earlier on, so mentioning that overlooking can be a blessing, a necessity, but also thirdly dangerous. And that is the aspect that I zoom in on in looking at overlooking, because I think it masks power, it hides power. And in my case, I specifically look at the different functions in law and look at how the bureaucratic functions, cities that are mainly created around government functions and functions around bureaucratic legal functions, are often overlooked. And I argue that this is no coincidence. It is a way of masking that governmentality and the power. And I think it also resonates with something that Professor Sutanuja noted on, she said a sentence saying, there's something more dangerous behind it. So let me then just briefly say, overlooking for me is three things. It's a theoretical lens. Firstly, it's a critical lens. Secondly, and it's a feminist lens. Theoretically, I look at other theoretical angles, such as focusing on the ordinary, the everyday. Authors who work with this minor jurisprudence. Authors in my field work with minor jurisprudence, looking at law from a minor key. A critical lens, because it exposes these power relations. And I think a feminist lens is very important. For me, that's that feminist work. And I rely on the work of social legal scholar Mariana Valverde to say that this shift in scale, was clicking the zoom, is a feminist move in looking at the domestic scale, domestic issues, but really taking issue with things that are not in the mega city domain. So I say that it's a theoretical lens, a critical lens, a feminist lens to think about cities, but for me to interrogate law, to look at law from a critical perspective, in really asking critical questions about how the role of law in structuring our society and the way in which legal functions also dictate and govern the priority of cities, the development of cities, and the relation in which they stand with each other, with other cities, and with governing structures. So that from my side, to give you a bit of perspective, the city that I work on, the cities I worked on was two bureaucratic cities in South Africa, the city of Pretoria and the city of Bloemfontein. These are, of course, Pretoria is a capital city, so one can ask, how can it be overlooked if it's a capital city? But exactly for this reason, it's the administrative capital. It was created for government functions. It is much less studied than more populous cities such as Cape Town and Johannesburg, which are megacities, economic hubs and centers. Finding myself now in the Department of Mercantile Law, I ask these critical questions, the extent to which capital plays a role vis-a-vis government in the attention that these cities receive. And then to end off with, I am definitely challenged by the question of culture and how do we structure solidarities. So thank you for that, Mrs. Sagala, Dr. Sagala. How do we, when are cities similar? How do we draw these comparisons and what brings them together? And is overlookedness a lens, or is that a category, or is it a way to rather just for opening up? But thank you. I think that has really sparked my interest and my thinking. So thank you to everyone. I'm going to hand over to Hannah, but simultaneously apologize because I'm in the middle of a faculty strategic session and we'll have to escape at some stage to that. But my thanks really for this opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Isolde. I always find it hard to follow you. First of all, thank you for the organizing of this event and for the 3 readers who carefully read the book. I want to acknowledge that we wrote the book in, or we were thinking, about the work, from 2015, all of us with our PhDs, and we sort of wrote the book between 2019 and 2020. So if I had to rewrite the book from my current perspective, I probably would change certain elements. And Professor Hudala actually mentioned some of the things that I think I would put into this next iteration of the book if I ever did one, which I will not. So there's something about the overlooking, the intentional or unintentional, and how it's not innocent, and that there's this power play. And then he spoke about overlooked parts of the city and which ones get that attention from academics. And I agree that there's something about thinking about the hinterland in the relationships between parts of the city and cities and those spaces around it. So maybe it's, what parts are becoming the urbanized parts, and those are the rural or the peri-urban, whatever language you want to use, but it's those hinterlands and that transition parts of the city. So I think those are particularly important to think about, especially in terms of food security, food systems, and livelihoods. And that reference point in thinking about metropolitization, it's really hard to think about policy, because it's the household, the neighborhood, the city, the hinterlands, and those international relations, right? I really liked Lisa's contribution in terms of thinking about the overlookedness is by design in policy, and how do we reorient this? I think that those learnings from those secondary cities, now I'm talking about place-based rather than the conceptual interpretation of it, I think that needs to be done all over the world. So it's those networks of municipalities and creating mechanisms for cities to learn from each other rather than learning from the capital, because we actually don't want to replicate the mistakes that have occurred in capital cities over decades. And there's also something that I heard about aspirations, and so why should the aspiration be to be the capital city? How do we create aspirations and notions of culture that allow our cities to maintain a certain societal fabric before it gets destroyed by becoming a large city? So there's something about keeping that possible slowness, or the integrity, or the rationale behind non-mega cities that I think is really important to think about, and maybe that's would be written about in the future. And from Dr. Sagala's comments, I think that there's something there about who lives in these cities and who resides in certain spaces, and then so you were specifically talking about the elderly staying in certain places. I don't know, I think that there's something there to be investigated and to be thought of more. So I think that's really interesting. I think I'll take that as a takeaway message, is the profile of residents, who stays there, who doesn't. And there's a lot of literature from area-based studies in Asia about the rural, right? Who stays in these rural towns, in for example, in Laos. How does the fabric maintain societal fabric in these spaces? Yeah, so I don't have any answers, but I found the reflections from the readers super generative for my own thinking. So thank you very much. Erwin, I'm going to hand it over
Yeah.
to you. And I'm really sorry, but I have to leave in 10 minutes for a train. So I'm going to stay for 10 minutes and then clock out. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah and Isolde, for starting the conversation. I think it's, I'll stay a bit longer just in case Hannah and Isolde have to leave. And also, I think one thing that I learned from this conversation, I think it's just starting in order to engage and further advance the conversation. And the idea with the book is really not to conclude or in any way to summarize what we learned and how we understood Overlook cities, but really to invite everyone to join us and continue this conversation as a collective urban scholarship to really revisit and reorient our attention in reimagining our collective urban future. And to be direct in that case, I'll share in the chat box here and also in the YouTube channel that we have this Overlook blog where you can share your thought, reflection, critique, or question in any language that you can share with us. So for Indonesians, you can share it in Indonesian, and I'll check that and work with you because it's kind of all of their reader question is like really invitation for us to think about these Overlook cities, and I completely share the concern and commitment that you all has shared in terms of first, Pak Delik mentioned about the power relation in Overlook cities, how who hold the power, where it's originated, how it's being reproduced, but also Alisa think about the what I'm trying to follow and working on in terms of the imbalanced power between the capital relocations and also the smaller and secondary cities around the capital new relocations. So I mentioned about the power of negotiation from Bontang in order to challenge the idea with the new capital, but also the persistent knowledge production about the urban as a special container. And really, like Professor Hudala mentioned about, that this Overlook city is a really contested space. And maybe the last point that I would like to mention is that really, as an invitation, we want to galvanize also not only the work of academia, but also policy maker, practitioner to really working with them, with the grassroots organization, with the network of cities beyond the capital and the dominant cities, to really foster a collective learning, solidarity, but also articulate Overlook cities as an alternative entry point. I think in the previous discussion, in a smaller discussion, Bu Elisha mentioned about the really innovative work from artist groups in Semarang on how to produce a new kind of urban knowledge, how to create a place and work with the communities there. It's a starting point and really invite everyone here to engage with us. And I'll share my email just in case that if you want to share your interest or have a further question, just feel free to drop me, and then we'll respond to you. So return to you, Pa Dimas, and just in case if anyone in the audience have any question, thought, or even your reflection about the Overlook cities or what we've discussed so far.
Maybe we can like ask for the audiences here to for 3 questions. So we'll start for 3 questions before we move into other email or also to Padlet. Anyone want to ask either from readers and also from the authors? Please, could you maybe raise your hand and also introduce a bit about yourself? Or maybe you want to give another reflection that it also you can do that.
Saud, I think you want to
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Asal,
thank
please.
you.
Yeah.
No, this is out of my curiosity. Hence we have also the book. The book is good, and we also would promote in among our students to read that and also to use it as a discussion. But what will be next? I'm just curious as the authors, or let's say the editors of the book. How is the plan? Because I remember some discussions like this can go with the next series, for example, and you also realize that we have many more overlooked cities around the globe that we haven't really I would say captured right into this discussion. So might want to have you thought about it to not exactly to extend, but kind of what will be next in terms of the story, and any discussion about it, which I think I'm interested to know, but maybe others also would be happy and perhaps can contribute as well.
Thank you very much for that. Well, we did do something actually. After the book, a colleague of mine, Susanna Alves Neves from Cambridge, asked me if I wanted to work on a project with her. And so we did. And so we produced a magazine. And hopefully Erwin or I will put it into the chat box in a minute. And so what we did was bring together French-speaking scholars and English-speaking scholars, and we tried to understand how do we think differently and how do we write differently. And so through the magazine we have a lot more contributions from sub-Saharan Africa and India, which we didn't have in the book. And so for me, that was really interesting. And also, oh, thank you, Erwin, put up the magazine. And so the magazine, I think, is really cool, not because I organized it, but because it has the photographs, the images, artwork. So it's a bit more of that cultural element that Lisa was talking about. But that's about it for me. So Erwin, Isolde, Julia, and I are working on a small viewpoint, a small little academic article. So hopefully, if that gets approved, that would be coming out sometime this year. So we're working on that at the moment. But for me, that's it right now. Is this small academic article? But if any of you want to get involved and sort of lead, I'm sure we would be interested to contribute. So, and I'm going to depart now, and I'm going to hand it over to Erwin to represent all of us. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I'm
you,
really
Hannah.
sorry, but I don't have a choice. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, now we can proceed to the next question. There is Putri from Bapenas actually asking, how about the inclusivity in the Overlook series?
Yeah, I think that's really important and one of the key questions in when we're thinking about Overlook City, not only in terms of at the city level or urban level, and thinking about what Pak Delegasun raised, quite strongly about the hierarchy imbalance between across different kind of typology of cities. But we have also seen that, for the last 2 years, actually, in terms of the pandemic, there is kind of a repercussions about the hierarchical discourse of secondary city or overlooked cities that mobilize around the deficit narrative that focus on the overlooked cities shortfall and overgeneralizing the experience across the pandemic, but also within the cities as well. If you look at my chapter that maybe kind of relate of how you experience the audience experience in Indonesia is how we think and around kind of the security sessions in overlooked cities. If you compare the capital relocations and the overlooked cities around the new capital relocations, so around the inclusivity or the opposite of it, the kind of what forms of inequity and injustice occur in overlooked cities. So if you think about the dominant narrative to move the capital is to save the Jakarta, but who being moved there, and what about the experience of people who are who experience the everyday life of vulnerability and securitization around the new capital? So the experience of Bontang cities and the mayor in order to pursue or advance climate change adaptation is being overlooked from the capital relocation. So I think that's really a good question, Putri, from Batnas, and it's kind of invitation for all of us to think about and consider inclusivity in the overlooked cities experience as well, but also across the different kind of beyond the overlooked cities. What does it mean? Who hold the kind of dominancy and the relevancy, and also the experience of the everyday life of the people in the overlooked city, and what does it mean in order to produce a different kind of or alternative avenue to think about urban knowledge and where it's come from. How does it difference? Hope that's answer or give a kind of starting point to your question, Putri, but feel free to drop me an email if you want to explore more.
Yeah, maybe the last response would be from Pak Delik, because yeah, we have like exceed or allocated time. So please, Pak Delik.
Yeah, I'm not responding because surely I'm not the expert, but I'm trying to reflect that we talk about overlooked cities, ordinary cities. In many respects, the scholars tend to, in a defensive situation, you know, just like to defend. Well, this is also happening, but can you forward outlook? You show that, you know, it is not because it's not there, not just because you are neglected. It is important, it is significant. That is something that is still in many ways missing, I guess. What would be significant elements, and it should be there. So not just reaction, you know, it tends to be just reaction to the big cities. Not always, but how even we use more mid-sized city, for instance, it's let's say frontiers of innovation or whatsoever you want to have it. I think that's something probably in the future some people can push forward that into that direction. Yeah, just comment or opinion or suggestion probably. Thank you.
Please, Edwin, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's really also a key important kind of a remark from Delik, but also a collective effort to think about in research practice to think about beyond all the city, but also I think in considering how to, I think the initial question, how to expand, how to further advance, it will require our collective effort and maybe invite everyone. I think Basaud and his colleague also started to share a profile of medium-sized cities in cities. I think it's the Bandung profile ones. So I think if student, your researcher in your institution and also research center want to expand, I think that's a good opportunity as well. But also my work in climate change adaptation across the medium-sized cities it have a common kind of a shared language across these overlooked cities. So it's yeah, and Balikpapan as well, to think about and consider how it influences our urban knowledge productions in a different way. So not only in academia, so different kind of format of engagement, conversation. And I think hopefully after this pandemic, we would have a more opportunity for a continuous dialogue, and really looking forward for, you know, an engaged conversation when we are in Bandung or in Jakarta. For the participant that we haven't had the opportunity to comment, feel free to share your email and we will respond by or offline or in emails?
Yeah, please proceed for participant who hasn't got the chance to ask directly. Hannah and also Pak Edwin has also, and post-abyssal has also provided the email link in the chat box, so feel free to contact them. So now we have reached the end of our book session, and I would like to summarize the points of reflection from the readers and also maybe from the authors. So the first one is that the concept of the overlook city has many similarities and resonates with the Indonesian cities of all sizes and scales. And maybe for several urban entities in Indonesia, the overlook cities phenomenon cannot be easily operationalized into either metropolitan or urban policies, where many factors are come to play. For example, the power play and maybe the infrastructure development, connecting cities, and a lot of other things. And in government side, the Ministry of National Development Planning or Bappenas actually is trying to make equal comparison between cities by introducing the degree of urbanization through several quantitative indicators such as the GDP or maybe the population density plotted against the several areas. And also currently from the government side, there are also no framework on the urbanization process. We witness only the definition of the output and maybe baseline condition, but not on the process. And then there are also the copycat phenomenon from other cities, from smaller or medium cities tend to replicate the policies in big cities such as Jakarta. And yeah, we see the reference from that. And also there are some discussion on the informality, which is signified throughout the book, which is like a really core component of the urban South. And yeah, I think that is all that I can summarize from the discussion. So then again, many thanks for our authors and also our readers and also of the participants who have attended this RDI book session. So before I close this session, the organizer asked me to ask you about taking a group picture. So maybe could you please turn on your video, and maybe the organizer can screenshot all of this screen. Yeah, please. Yeah, maybe.
Thank you Pak Sumedi. Terima kasih sudah hadir.
Is my voice clear?
It's a kind of bit far away, but could you please increase your volume?
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's clear.
Okay, nice. I will count. I will count down from 3 to 1. Just stay smile. I will count from now. Wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay, nice. Once again. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, so
thank you, Mas Dimas.
Yeah. So thank you once again to all of the respective authors and also the readers for attending these sessions. And also thanks for all participants. See you in the next RDI book sessions. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone. Thank you,
Bye.
Padeli.
Thank you.
Melissa.
Congratulations, Erwin.
Thank you, Pak Saud.
Yeah, please let's continue the project. Yeah, in RDI, I just post. We have a Citypedia, so maybe take a look on that, and we'll see how we can explore. And we have also Galuh here, right?
Selamat ya Pak Bos semuanya.
Oh, you remember me, so.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
See.
Yeah.
We was in IDC 2004.
Yeah. How are you doing now?
Good. Yeah. And now Edwin.
Can you write your email here in the chat?
Yeah.
We'll reach you.
Yeah, great. Happy to see you.
Yeah. Thank you. I noticed.
Thank you, Solde.
Congratulations,
and Huang for
Edwin.
attending. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I have to run for another commitment, pass out, Isolde and everyone, but it's really a fruitful conversation, and we will continue in the next one at the different kind of event or occasion at RDI.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.